July 64 AD. Rome is on fire, not a small fire, not an accident. The greatest city in the world, burning. Thousands of people running through the streets with nowhere to go. Children, families, soldiers, merchants, all of them, running. For 9 days straight. 10 of Rome's 14 districts were damaged. 3 of them were completely wiped off the map. Ancient temples, markets that had stood for centuries, gone. All of it, gone. And where was the emperor while the city burned? Some historians say he rushed back from his villa to help. Others say he opened his palace to refugees, spent his own money on food and shelter. But there's a third version, the one that survived. They said he stood on a tower, watching the fire spread across the skyline, playing his lyre, while Rome burned. Now, before you decide who this man was, before you make up your mind, you need to understand one thing. He didn't start like this. Nobody does. Every monster has a beginning, and Nero's beginning was more complicated than the fire. 37 AD, a boy is born inside the most powerful family in the world. His name at birth, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. His mother's name, Agrippina the Younger. Remember that name. Agrippina was not just any Roman noblewoman. She was the great-granddaughter of the Emperor Augustus, sister of the Emperor Caligula. She had grown up inside the machine of Roman imperial power, and she understood it better than most men who ran it. She had already been exiled once by her own brother Caligula for plotting against him. She survived that. She came back. That tells you everything you need to know about Agrippina. When Emperor Claudius came to power after Caligula's assassination, she saw her opening. She arranged a marriage to him, her own uncle. Romans found it strange enough that the Senate had to pass a special law just to allow it. Agrippina didn't care. It gave her the throne. Claudius had a biological son, Britannicus, the true heir. Agrippina maneuvered around him from day one. She had Nero formally adopted by Claudius, pushing her own son ahead of the emperor's blood. She hired Seneca, the greatest intellectual in Rome, as Nero's private tutor. She secured military titles for the boy before he was old enough to shave. She put his face in front of every soldier, every senator, every person who mattered. She was engineering a future, her future. But there was a tension underneath all of it. Nero was not a warrior, not a politician. He loved music. He loved theater. He loved chariot racing. He wanted to perform on stage, not rule an empire. Agrippina had a different plan. She sat next to him in official meetings. She whispered decisions into his ear in front of ambassadors. She made it clear to everyone watching. This young emperor was an extension of her will. Then Nero fell in love. A woman named Acte, a former slave, a freedwoman. Not noble, not strategic, just real. For Nero, she was probably the first person in his life who saw him. Not the emperor, not Agrippina's instrument, just him. Agrippina was furious. She threatened. She manipulated. She made Acte's life dangerous. And in doing so, she pushed her son one step closer to the edge. Then, in 54 AD, Claudius suddenly died. The official story, bad mushrooms at dinner. But Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio all pointed to poison. The imperial physician who had access to everything, said nothing convenient. No investigation was opened. Agrippina didn't seem surprised at all. Nero was 16 years old, suddenly Emperor of Rome, ruler of 50 million people. And standing right behind him, always, was his mother. Here's the part people always forget. The first 5 years of Nero, pretty good. He ruled with Seneca beside him. and Seneca was a genuinely remarkable mind. Together they cut taxes that had been crushing ordinary Romans for years. They put a stop to the secret trials, the executions without evidence. They let citizens appeal directly against corrupt governors. The Senate had more authority than it had seen under Caligula or Claudius. Romans had a name for it, the Quinquennium Neronis, the 5 good years of Nero. And outside the palace, Nero was just alive. He raced chariots in private. He composed music. He performed poetry. He wanted audiences. He wanted applause. He wanted to be an artist, not a ruler. But Agrippina never left. Every meeting, every decision, her hand always somewhere close to the wheel. When Nero tried to grant concessions to a foreign king, she threatened to walk into the Senate and overrule him publicly, in front of everyone. Nero backed down. The tension grew every year. Small disagreements became open confrontations. Nero started making decisions without telling her. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. The advisors noticed, the senators noticed, and Agrippina noticed. She threatened to throw her support behind Britannicus, Claudius's real son, to replace Nero with the legitimate heir. It was a bluff, but it was a dangerous one. And Nero heard it. He looked at Seneca, he looked at his advisors, and he made a decision. He was done, being controlled. 55 AD. Britannicus, Claudius's real son, the original heir, was 13 years old, just a boy. He was at a dinner with the imperial family. Normal evening, food, wine, conversation. He reached for his cup, and he collapsed. The room froze. Servants rushed forward. Guests stood up in alarm. Nero barely looked up from his plate. He told everyone calmly. This was epilepsy. Britannicus had always been prone to seizures, nothing to worry about. Sit down, keep eating. They carried the boy out of the room. He was dead before morning. Tacitus, one of the most careful historians of the ancient world, writes that Nero tested the poison beforehand. He tried it on a slave first. The first dose was too slow. The boy showed symptoms, but didn't die. Nero adjusted the formula, tested again. The second batch worked. Britannicus was 13 years old. He had never plotted against Nero. He had no army, no faction, no power. He was just a boy who happened to be born with the wrong blood. And that was enough. The ancient sources disagree on many things about Nero. They all agree on this. After Britannicus, something changed. The Senate felt it. The palace felt it. A line had been crossed, quietly at a dinner table, and no one had stopped it. Rome still didn't understand. What was coming? 59 AD. Nero had a new woman, Poppaea Sabina. She was not like Acte, soft, quiet, careful. Poppaea was sharp, ambitious, beautiful in the way that makes people afraid, and she told him the truth he already knew. As long as your mother lives, you will never be free. He tried poison first. She survived. He tried a different compound, a stronger dose. She survived. He tried a third time. She survived. 3 times. He tried to kill his own mother. 3 times. 3 times she walked away. Tacitus writes that Agrippina had suspected this for years. She had been taking small doses of various poisons, building immunity, the way a soldier hardens his body for battle. She had prepared herself for the day her son decided she was a problem. Because she knew him. She built him. So Nero changed his approach. He had engineers design a collapsing ceiling above her bedroom, mechanisms built into the beams, designed to drop the ceiling's full weight onto her while she slept. The mechanism failed. She survived. Then came the plan that Tacitus describes with something close to disbelief. Nero had a boat built, a special ship. It looked like a perfectly normal Roman galley. But deep in the hull, hidden compartments, release mechanisms. The ship was designed to fall apart, in open water. He sent his mother an invitation, a reconciliation dinner. Warm, personal. He missed her. He was sorry. Agrippina came. The dinner was warm. He laughed. He listened. At the end of the night, he walked her to the dock himself. He hugged her. He kissed her cheek. He helped her onto the boat. He stood on the dock and watched the ship sail into the dark. He kept watching until the lights disappeared. Far out on the water, the hull opened. The boat collapsed. She swam to shore. Agrippina made it to a villa on the shore. She sent a messenger to Nero immediately. "I've had an accident on the water. I'm resting. I'm fine." She kept her voice steady. She gave away nothing. Nero panicked completely. He called Seneca. He called his commander Burrus. He paced. He talked in circles. He asked the same question again and again. What do I do? What do I do? And the answer was always the same. Send soldiers. That night 3 soldiers broke into her villa. Agrippina heard them enter. She sat up in bed. She looked at them, and she understood immediately. No more plans, no more survival. This was the end. She pulled back her robe. She pointed to her stomach. "Strike here. Strike the womb that bore Nero." The soldiers did. Nero came to see the body afterward. He stood there for a long time. The ancient sources disagree on what he felt. Suetonius says he looked at her calmly and commented on her figure. Others say he was shaking. Maybe both, maybe neither. He went back to Rome. He wrote a letter to the Senate. Agrippina had been plotting against him. She had tried to take the throne. She had taken her own life when discovered. That was the official story. Rome was quiet for a few days, then life continued. He was 22 years old. For a few years after his mother's death, Nero ruled. He married Poppaea. He divorced his first wife, Octavia, and later had her executed on false charges. The Senate was afraid of him. The palace was afraid of him. But Rome was still standing. Then, July 18th, 64 AD. Fire. It started near the Circus Maximus, in a row of shops packed with oil and cloth and dry timber. Everything a fire needs to grow. It spread to the next block, then the next, then the next. The wind carried embers across the city. New fires started blocks away from the first, and it spread, and spread, and spread. 9 days. 10 of Rome's 14 districts damaged. 3 of them erased completely. Nero was at his villa in Antium, 35 miles from Rome, when the fire started. He did rush back. That part is true. He opened his palace gardens to refugees. He organized food supplies. He spent his own treasury. But none of that is the story people remember. Because when the fire went out, someone had to be blamed. There were rumors already that the fire had been set deliberately, that servants of the emperor had been seen lighting new fires after the first ones died. Nobody could prove it, but people talked. Nero chose the Christians, a small sect. No political allies, no army, easy targets. What followed was brutal. Public torture, executions staged as entertainment, some of them covered in animal skins and torn apart by dogs, others burned alive, as torches, to light his garden parties at night. Tacitus, who despised Christians, wrote that even he felt pity, because everyone understood. This wasn't justice, this was theater. And while Rome mourned its ruins, Nero built the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, 300 acres of palace, park, and lake in the heart of the city, ceilings that rotated, panels that rained perfume on guests, and at the entrance, a bronze statue of Nero himself, 30 meters tall, as a god. Rome was not happy. 65 AD, a group of senators and military officers formed a conspiracy to assassinate him. The Pisonian conspiracy, the largest plot against a Roman emperor in over a century. It failed. Someone talked. Nero's response was total. Mass arrests, forced suicides, no trials, no mercy. He sent soldiers to the homes of anyone who had been named, or suspected, or simply disliked. Among the dead, Seneca, his teacher, the man who had shaped everything he thought about the world. Seneca received the order calmly. He opened his veins in a warm bath surrounded by his students. He kept talking, dictating philosophical observations until his voice faded, until there was nothing left to say. And Poppaea, the woman he had killed his mother for, was pregnant with their second child. In a rage over something trivial, Nero kicked her. She died. He was reportedly destroyed by grief. He had her declared a goddess. He searched Rome until he found a young slave who resembled her. He had him castrated. He married him, in public, with full ceremony. Nobody said a word. 68 AD. The empire finally moved against him. Galba, a governor in Spain, raised his legions in rebellion. Other governors followed. Then the armies in Rome itself turned. The Senate, that same body that had applauded him for years, declared him a public enemy. The first time that had ever happened to a sitting emperor. Nero fled Rome in the middle of the night, with 4 servants. That was all that remained of the man who had once commanded the greatest empire on earth, the man who had built a palace on 300 acres, who had put a 30-meter statue of himself as a god in the center of Rome, who had burned the city, killed his mother, silenced his teacher. He hid in a villa 4 miles outside the city. He could hear the horses in the distance, getting closer. He begged his servants to go first, to show him it was possible. None of them would. Finally, his secretary helped him guide the blade to his own throat. As the soldiers broke through the door, his last words, recorded by Suetonius: Qualis artifex pereo. What an artist. The world loses with me. He was 30 years old. With his death, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the direct line from Julius Caesar and Augustus, ended. The bloodline that had ruled Rome for 100 years, gone, not in battle, not with honor, in a borrowed room, begging a servant to help him die. He believed until the very end that history would remember him as the artist, the musician, the poet, the man who felt things more deeply than anyone around him. Maybe he was right. The world doesn't usually remember the artists. It remembers the fires,